Ben's been one of the faces of the CPL for years, Pacific, Ottawa, Calgary, and most recently, Vancouver FC. In fact, I think you're the only guy to play for 4 teams in the CPL. Is that right?
We're holding each other up there.
Yeah, I'd say there's 1 or 2 other ones potentially.
Yeah. Okay. But now you've retired, Ben. No longer a professional footballer. We have Craig and Jimmy here who often talk about retirement and how it just destroyed their lives. And why they're so bitter and angry and jaded now. So I want Craig and Jimmy to give you some advice that perhaps they should have been given.
Like, I grew up watching these two, so I'm all ears.
Craig, give Ben one piece of advice.
Don't retire.
Yeah. Well, why did I miss that one?
It's not too late, is it?
Yeah.
Should have called you 4 months ago.
Yeah.
That's true, yeah.
That's a good
What was
one.
it, Ben, that actually made you decide to retire? Because you were, what, 32?
32, yeah. And yeah, to be honest, like last season, I had no plans to hang him up. I think it was, I would say though, coming from Calgary, coming back home to Vancouver, subconsciously, I think maybe it was the beginning of the end for me, where I'd spent a lot of time away from home, and I had kind of had it in my head that this would be the last stop. But I still left a couple of years on my contract here, so it was it all came about somewhat quickly. Big catalyst for it was being offered my current role in the front office, which we had talked about when I made the trade from Cavs to Vancouver. We talked about that as a future opportunity, and it was a big reason for wanting to come home and sort of build that longer term future. And then the opportunity just kind of came a year or two earlier than I had planned. And honestly, I haven't really looked back. It felt like the right decision, and it still does. And I feel just incredibly grateful for the 14 years I got to spend in the professional game.
Yeah, from an advice point of view, I would say that just keeping busy, but you have something else to keep your mind occupied, and you're doing that. So that would be my advice, is to stay busy. But I really did enjoy my retirement from the start, certainly. And that was being involved in television, and to keep that connection to the game, connection to players that you played with, and a reason to make phone calls and get up in the morning. So you've obviously doing that.
Yeah, I think that's a huge one for me too. It's just I'm not too far from it. Of course, like especially when the first ball's kicked for the 2025 season, I'm sure that'll be a little bit emotional. But I feel like if the team wins a championship this year, for example, I'm still a huge part of it, right? I haven't lost that sort of teammate feeling, which for me was huge. That's something I've really enjoyed my whole career. So.
I think the same for me when I retired, and then I went up into the office at TFC, and it was an easy transition for me. And I think a lot of times players, when they do retire and they step away from the game, that's when they find it really difficult. So seeing that you're still involved in the game, you're around the players, you're around the club, and you wake up every morning going to the training facility, it's a better transition. For sure.
Yeah, and I don't need to worry about having a few pints the night before either. It's actually pretty good. I've got weekends, I've got holidays, I've got vacation days. I had to ask how to use those. It's a funny concept.
I think the issues seem to be with retirement, not the initial retirement, but about 10, 15, 20 years later. Clearly, with Jimmy and Craig's examples. Now what? You're a fucking podcast. Yeah. Jesus Christ, this wasn't the plan. But no, I mean, so if you ever get a chance to host a podcast, just don't. Number one, there's much better opportunities out there.
Not as lucrative as you thought, or
no. Well, Ben is the director of partnerships with Vancouver, so maybe he starts one with Footy Prime, because we haven't had one of those yet with Vancouver. Just throwing it out there, Ben. And Ben,
there we go.
I act as the consigliere for Craig a lot of the time. So if you need some therapy, you get my number. You can call me anytime in the evening. We can share a pint and start smoking reefer nonstop. Just so you know.
Again, the joys of retirement, right?
There you go.
I love it. I appreciate the invitation. I'll give
there
you a call.
You go.
Wonga, that could be a great career move for you, a new business plan, right? Almost like just that, I won't call it a therapist for former footballers, but just someone to help guide them through the process, and to still feel good about themselves. Have those late night phone calls. Have those, cheeky afternoon pints or smokes.
They're cheeky too. I do that with you, and I did one with JC yesterday with his kid with us. Yeah,
we're all kind of retired. Let's be honest.
I don't think we should be talking about the kid drinking on the podcast there, Wong.
Yes. Well, things happen.
We'll leave that off air. Yeah.
It's a video podcast. You can say what the hell you like. I think kickoff's April the 5th, right? Do you feel retired, Ben? I mean,
great question.
Yeah, I do. I think, honestly, like I said, I don't think I've really looked back. It felt like the right decision at the time, and it still does now. I'm enjoying my day to day. I'm enjoying those little things like having weekends and holidays. Again, as silly as it sounds, like that's so foreign to me. My entire adult life, I've been sort of a slave to the you're either in season or you're in preseason or you're I wasn't blessed enough to play at the level that Craig and Jimmy did, but I've spent my entire life chasing to be there, right? So I feel like I haven't had a proper day off in 15 years. So honestly, I'm loving it. I'm having a great time, and I enjoy stuff like this to stay connected with the game. I enjoy, our offices are in the same building as the change room, so I get to see all the boys still coming in. We'll, have a coffee when I've got time. Sometimes lads, I'm in a meeting. Come on.
Lucky you, Ben.
But yeah. Again, I'm sure there'll be a few emotional days. Honestly, probably the most emotional one was I flew to Calgary for the final. And watched, my old team there lift the trophy a year after I'd left, and and that was right when I was sort of making this decision. So that was, I think, if I could have done one thing to end my career, it would have been just to end on a high winning a trophy. But we won the league in 2023, so it's not all. Or sorry, yeah.
And it was fun in Calgary. That was a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was a great weekend. And again, it nobody knew I was retiring, but it ended up sort of feeling like a little bit of a retirement tour for me. I got to hang out with you guys. I got to, present the Players Player of the Year award at the gala. Doing hosting kind of TV spots and stuff, just being an ex-Cavs player, talking about the game and stuff. So, I feel like I had my little weekend in the limelight without anyone knowing what I was planning.
Do you see our boy Jordan Wilson maybe as being like the pioneer of for the first time a retired CPL player? I know you're not in the media necessarily right now, but I suggest you'll get opportunities if you choose to at some point.
I'd be all over it. Honestly, I mean, I grew up watching you guys, on the pitch in Craig and Jimmy's case, but also off the pitch, like watching you guys on the score and stuff back in the day. So big fan, and then would definitely entertain those kind of ideas in the future. But I think Jordan's a great example. I think Nick Ledgerwood's a great example. Going into coaching, Mason Trafford, kind of became a bit of a mentor for me, moving into the commercial side of the club. I think right there you've got three fantastic individuals, fantastic sort of representatives for the CPL that have shown what the league brings beyond just on-field opportunities. It's for a guy like me coming back in the first season, it was a chance to come start building a legacy for life beyond football, and being a part of it from day one. Writes a pretty cool story.
I want to bring. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go. Oh, thanks, Greg. I was just thinking you were talking about the CPL final on that weekend, but there's always a moment of truth for a big decision, especially something like this. Can you take us back to kind of your decision making? Was it a pros and cons, or was it like, I don't want to do this anymore and I want to do this? What was it like for you?
Yeah, I think it was more the latter. I think it was, again, watching my old team at Cavs do what we've been trying to do for the 3 years that I was there. I felt, first and foremost, felt like immense happiness and pride for the group of friends that I made and the organization there. And then I sort of had this feeling, if I was to play one more year, what am I hoping to get out of it? And I was like, it's lifting the trophy, right? And I sort of it came down to, okay, well, I know what it takes to chase that, but there's no guarantees, right? And so it was kind of do I want to put my body through a whole off season preparing, a whole preseason training camp preparing, for something that I would love to be a part of, and I would love to sort of cap off my career with a moment like that, but I don't need it. I feel, immensely grateful for what I've been able to do, and proud of what I've been able to do. And I don't think I need to chase it anymore. And so as soon as I had that, I was like, that's my fire as an athlete kind of quietly going out. Right. So I think it's time to put all my time and energy into something else.
What was it like playing under Tommy Wheeldon?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, great human being first and foremost. I'm also, a bit of a footy nerd, which I think I would call him as well. He probably wouldn't be happy I'm calling him a nerd, but so I just really enjoyed, chatting with him over a coffee. Right, we'd chat in tactics. I loved how brave he was to try different things. I think in their title winning season, like Dan Klump playing basically as an inverted center back, like I was all over that. I was flicking on Cavs games, not just to support my old team, but also I was just like interested and curious as to what they're doing. So that's probably my favorite thing about Tommy, was he just has the balls to try things, and put his hand up when he makes a mistake, but also looks pretty good when it comes off. So
I tried to sign you as well, Ben.
I know. I remember we had
number of times I wanted
the
to
2019 final, ironically in Calgary as well.
That's right.
Yeah,
I tried to get him.
Tell me, Ben, what was Jimmy's approach?
We spoke. I told him I wanted to bring him in.
Yeah, we chatted a few times. Honestly, for me, I thought I was just staying at Pacific at the time, and I had a pretty good setup there, close to home, and I have some close friends on the island there. So that's all it came down to. I mean, fast forward a month or two, and I ended up in Ottawa. So we were just I think the timing just wasn't right there. But the idea of playing for Jimmy, I was always super, super excited about. Again,
left side bias, right?
Pump your guys' tires too hard, but guys I grew up watching, right? It's always cool to connect with those people.
So ben, what's that case of like? So go ahead, Jimmy.
Ben, you played in Spain, you played in Ireland. Tell us how those opportunities came up, and also the experiences that you gained playing in those countries. Yeah,
I mean, I've always been a guy that was trying to chase the highest level at any sniff that I had, and so I think I've bounced around a lot. Those being two places. Spain is a bit of a funny story. I won't get into too many details of how I left the Whitecaps and stuff, but essentially I was like, I'm not playing here. I'm going, and I packed my bags, booked a one-way ticket. I was lucky. I'd actually played a tournament with the residency program in Madrid a few years prior when I was like 16, 17. And I begged a brace against Real Madrid's U19s. So I had this like news article in Spain about this Canadian kid scoring this brace. And it was a pretty solid Real Madrid team. Like Danny Carvajal was playing, Jesse Rodriguez. There's a few like well-known guys. And then it was actually an old teammate of yours, Julian de Guzman. He made a close friend in Coruña, who ended up working with some Canadian agents and stuff. And they got myself and Samuel Piet trials there. So I ended up spending a month at Deportivo, a month at Villarreal on trial. Ended up with nothing after both of those. But Deportivo liked me enough to kind of recommend me to a second tier team there, or second division. Coruso, it's like a smaller team in Vigo. So I went and played a season there, and then following that season, Deportivo came back for me. So that was probably, in hindsight, that 1 year at Depor. They were in La Liga, and I was just trying to break into the first team. That's probably the closest I came to the highest level, and I was just soaking it all up. I was trying to learn everything I could. We had a pretty wicked team at the time. Luis Alberto went to Lazio after. Lucas Perez went to Arsenal for 12-15 million. I can't remember, but it was a pretty wicked team to be involved with. And I feel like that is what sort of made me into the player, like that one season. Or actually, I'd say the two. At Caruso, I kind of learned how to play a bit dirty and play in a mid-table team that's just fighting for results. And then Deportivo, I got to play with some of these big players and really, really take my game to the next level, I think. So I'd say those 2 years were incredibly formative for what I went on to do the rest of my career and the player that I sort of built myself into. I think you asked about Ireland as well. Ireland was before the CPL was launched, I'd actually just agreed to a new 2-year deal to stay in Derry. Like, I absolutely loved it. It was my wife as well loved it. She worked at a really cool historic hotel in town. It's one of those smaller UK towns where you go out after a win and pints are just coming to you. You don't know who they're from. Someone's covering your tab at the restaurant. But likewise, if you don't do the business on a Friday night, Ireland, a lot of Friday nights. It's like, yeah, we'll stay in and cook tonight.
We're charging you double. You're paying for the bar.
Yeah. So I was only there like 9-10 months, I think. But played Europa League qualifiers, won the League Cup. It was a whirlwind, but a ton of fun. I was like gung ho to stay if the opportunity to come home hadn't come about.
But then you did come home, right? And I mean, is it almost a culture shock though, coming from Spain? Depor, for example, who people forget they won the La Liga in 2000 with Julian, who was actually the Player of the Year that year as well.
And then the Champions League semi-final 2 years in a row.
Yeah, it was a fantastic team. And then, obviously Derry, Ireland, these sporting football, cultures. And you come back to Canada where we're building that culture. Was it a tough adjustment to you? You knew what you were getting into, I know that. But was it still having experienced that, tasted that, and then to come back to Canada?
I think so, yeah. It was definitely an adjustment period. But I also think I saw it as a challenge. Again, that decision to come home, I think, was potentially the beginning of the end in that the reason for coming home was for family. It was to start building a life, outside of football. I was sick of packing up and moving, every year or 2 years. I wanted some stability for my wife and I, and then this sort of long-term opportunity. So I think I came in with the right mindset to make it work, but it was definitely an adjustment period. It was also a funny one, like you guys as players would know, like if you're in talks with a club or you've just received an offer or something from a club, like first thing you do, you go on and like have a Google and look at the stadium, look at the fans, look at the city, like all that kind of stuff. So coming to the CPL was the first time I played for a club where I actually, like, the first game we played, I had no idea what to expect. Like, there was no existing imagery to look at and sort of visualize. So it was actually really messed with my like pregame routine. Like that first game with Pacific, I was like, what's going on here? Like, I can't do my usual like visualization. And it sounds super dorky, but it like genuinely like threw my head for a spin. I couldn't sleep the night before. I was like, what am I getting myself into tomorrow?
Ben, that's the same as us with our podcast when we're all working out of our bedrooms.
We're
like, where's the cameraman?
What are we walking into today?
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh God. No, it's interesting. I want to go back to when Jimmy tried to sign you. Was it a case of like, him passing like a bar, a napkin across the table with a number on it? And then you just like laughed at him? Or
I mean, it was casual like that, but it was more just chatting about, what I wanted. Actually, I remember Jimmy just asking, what do you want to do? Like, we'd love to have you. But it was very much about me as a person, which I've always really appreciated when coaches sort of take that angle.
Yeah,
that's one thing interesting.
The other thing is too with Ben is he's very well respected throughout the league, and a lot of the players that were in my dressing room at the time were Nate and Manny and all these players. They all liked him as well, and they wanted to bring him in. We wanted to bring him in as a staff, but that was the same throughout the league. I think every player wanted to get a hold of Ben, and so it's a little tap on your shoulder saying, "Well done," because he's definitely a good guy and good player. It's all pumping his tires.
Jimmy. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's tough to go after a player, like poach a player, whatever, like take a player from another team when you all have the same budget to work with, though. Like, it would have been, I'm sure, much easier for you to build the team you wanted if you could have a bit more wiggle room with, oh, what are you getting there? I want you more kind of thing, right?
You mentioned how Jimmy was actually, part of the reason the allure was, you watch Jimmy playing, and et cetera, and that was an allure for you. Look at Canadian football, Canadian soccer in general. Now you're on the other side, right? You're in this building role as well. You're kind of one of us. I hate to say it. Sorry, Ben. You know, whether it's media, whether it's, you know, behind in the offices at the clubs, we're all kind of trying to build this sport. But let's be honest, Canada's done a shit job at that forever, a long time. Where are we at, do you think? Are we a soccer nation? I don't think we're there yet. I think we're close. I think we're building towards it. But I don't think we're there. And when people say that, I think it's disingenuous. Where do you think, as a former player now on the other side, where are we as a nation?
Yeah, I would agree with those sentiments. I definitely do not think we're there yet. But in that same breath, you know, we're located at the Langley Event Center. I sell a lot of corporate sponsorships. That's, you know, a huge part of my gig. And when I'm, you know, making these pitches about, you know, what you're actually buying into, I talk about, you know, the number of registered soccer players in Canada, which I think the latest study was like 1.22 million, let's say, registered soccer players in Canada. And I'm like, you know, putting together these pitch decks, whatever. And I'm like looking outside at the Langley Event Center and I see, you know, 50 people out in the field kicking a ball around, right? A lot of them new Canadians, for example. And I'm like, how many people are, you know, call Canada home now that are, you know, obsessed with the game of football, that are not counted in that number of registered players? And I think that's sort of where I see a huge runway for the sport to grow is, I think we're sort of just waiting for that catalyst, which, you know, I think we all hope is 2026, right? To really take us, you know, I think we're, let's say 85, 90% of the way there, to really, you know, bring some of the top players in the world to Vancouver and Toronto, have, you know, families that are sort of casual sports fans be at that game or watching at a bar or watching at a restaurant and see, you know, Canadian people competing against some of the best in the world and on our home soil. And you know, it sounds a little bit romantic, but I truly think that could be the catalyst that takes us, you know, to the next level where, you know, it's funny. I told that story about Ireland about, you know, not wanting to go out if we lose, but like, that's where I kind of aspire Canada to get to, right? Because it's what happens on a Saturday night or a Friday night is it means something to everybody, right? It's a part of the community, it's a part of the culture. And I think, you know, soccer is sort of a blue collar sport. Like that's in its truest form. Like that's the game that I fell in love with. And so that's a very long-winded answer, but that's the game I'm hoping to help cultivate in Canada here.
No, it's great to hear. You're now at a club that's really progressively run by Rob Frand and company. Grady McDonald, he's one of those players that, so I love Vancouver's kind of ethos where they're going to target MLS academies, find those kids who slip through the cracks and sign them. They did that. He's now gone for a record fee overseas. How good was this kid?
I mean, great footballer, but I mean, you saw me smile right away when you mentioned his name. I love the kid, but more than anything, more than the talent, more than anything, he's just got this like unbreakable mentality. To be 16 years old and sort of have that where you know, knock him down, gets back up, no questions asked. As a, you know, a veteran player in the team, tell him to do something, give him a little piece of coaching, whatever. It's like, yep, like more or less like, yes sir, yep. Like just so eager to learn, so eager to please, and just be a part of a team and help compete and win football matches. So I think you know, he's got the talent, he's got the body for it. He's 16 years old. He's bigger and stronger than I've ever been. Right? He's got all the tools, but that mentality is what's going to take him to hopefully the highest level.
Will TJ Taib be the next one?
I hope so. TJ is another great kid to work with. You know, he's had a few injury troubles, you know, that have slowed him down a little bit, but I think he's, again, great head on his shoulders, great work ethic. So it's his for the taking, especially, I think, you know, with the roster going a bit younger this year, hopefully he'll see some good minutes. You know, we obviously sold James Cameron as well, but I'd also, you know, keep your eyes peeled for the next crop coming through, because our scouting team, and I'll shout out Jeevan Kang, our director of, well, actually, I think he's 6'5" now, but anyways, he does a great job on the scouting side of things, and actually getting these young talents in early.
And as someone that went to Europe as well early in your career, I mean, you can offer these kids some pretty unique advice, I'm sure. When is the right time to jump? Europe's going to always be there, right, for these players. You know, that's going to be the big carrot, you'd think, along with MLS to a certain point. But do you see yourself in a separate position where you can give them advice that perhaps other players can't?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer everyone needs to tell their own story and write their own story. So I try to refrain from giving too direct advice like that. But I would say, you know, my opinion on it is pre-CPL, and even for the first few years of the league, my advice, if I was being blunt to a 16-year-old, would be head to Europe as soon as you can. And that is just, I think, I saw what happened to me as a player when I went to Spain as a 20-year-old. And I have no regrets, but I can't help thinking, you know, what if I went when I was 16, 17 and actually was learning, you know, what I learned at that young age and had a few more years to implement it. So, but to complement what we've all been trying to build here, I think that advice is changing. Where I do think I think Grady's a great example. I think Kwesi Poku's a great example. Even Tristan Borges has come back to the league now, but what he did in 2019 and then gets his move to Belgium, I do think it's an incredible platform for a young player to play meaningful minutes, play with, you know, veteran players, learn how to compete, learn how to win football matches, and then take all that to greener pastures.
Well, Jimmy and Craig left at 16 and 17, right? And now they're hosting a podcast, so it doesn't always work out. I know what you're saying. Hey, Ben, listen, thank you so much for this. This is really great. Good luck as the next part of your next chapter of your career begins in earnest. And, you know, I think Canadian football is in better shape for having you and that side of things as well. So thanks so much for this. And we'll get you back on for sure at some point if you're open to it.
Open to it anytime. I'm a big fan and appreciate your guys' time and everything you've done to pave the way for guys like me coming through.
Ben, you're on the right path. Just do not call Wonger.
Yeah.
If the phone rings, just leave it.
I'm still hung up on this drinking with JC's kid thing. It's a little inappropriate. So yeah.
Well, inappropriate is a word often used with Wonger. So yeah, Jimmy, so that's probably the best advice he's given you so far. Is just don't pick up that phone.
Pretty fucking good.
Thanks, mate. Take care.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Chat soon.
Cheers, Ben.
That's Ben Fisk. Yeah, that's a great chat. Yeah, I find it interesting, and you've seen these Canadian guys who call them journeymen. I think it's fair to say, you know, and that's fine. That's a good career. You know, you've traveled the world playing your game. You've come back home, helped to build this thing we're trying to do here in Canada with the CPL. I find these talks really often more interesting than when you talk to the superstar who's been given stuff on a platter their whole careers. I find these kind of chats so much more interesting.